Imagine knowing in just a few hours you're going to be executed. You were given a chance to request your last meal. You could ask for a steak, burger, fried chicken, ice cream, pretty much anything you want. You ask for a single olive. And not only that, you specifically asked for the pip to be left inside. This is the strange final meal of Victor Harry Feguer. A 27-year-old man who was convicted of and killing an Iowa doctor, and he would become the last person ever to be executed in the state of Iowa. But the strangest part simply wasn't what he ate. It was what he apparently wanted that tiny olive to represent, because according to the accounts of his final days, Feguer hoped that the olive pip would eventually turn into an olive tree from his grave. So how did he end up on death row? What exactly did he do? Did he choose something incredibly small? This is the story of Victor Feguer. Victor Harry Feguer was born in Michigan in 1935. He was a drifter and eventually made it to Iowa in 1960. He rented a room in the city and, according to a later court record, became involved in crime that would ultimately cost another man's life. At the time, Feguer was only 25 years old, and the case that followed would become one of the most notorious cases in Iowa's history. The victim was Dr. Edward Roy Bartels. Bartels was a physician living and working in Iowa. On the evening on the 11th of July 1960, he received a telephone call requesting for medical assistance. The caller claimed the woman needed a doctor. Bartels responded to the call, but sadly, he never came. According to the court records, Feguer had arranged the meeting and kidnapped Bartels. The doctor was then taken across the Mississippi River into Illinois. 10 days later, Bartels' body was found in a wooded rural area. He had been shot once in the back of the head. The case then suddenly became a murder investigation, and the investigators needed to find the person responsible. The investigation eventually led authorities to Victor Feguer, and incredibly, one of the things that helped to expose him was the victim's car. Feguer travelled south and was eventually arrested in Birmingham, Alabama. He was attempting to sell Dr. Bartels' car. That immediately raised suspicions. The FBI arrested him in July 1960. He was only 25 years old, and the quiet man pictured alongside the FBI agents was now facing a murder investigation that could potentially end with execution. Feguer was eventually charged under the federal kidnapping law because Bartels had been transported across state lines. His trial took place in 1961. The defense raised questions about Feguer's mental state and presented an insanity defense, but ultimately the jury found him guilty and he was sentenced to death. The court records show Feguer appealed his conviction and raised several issues, including questions around his competency, the insanity defense, and evidence used against him. The appeal was ultimately unsuccessful. There was still one possibility though: clemency. President J.F. Kennedy personally reviewed his case. On March 9th, 1963, Kennedy discussed Feguer's execution with Iowa's Governor Harold Hughes. Hughes was against capital punishment and asked Kennedy to reconsider, but Kennedy ultimately refused to grant clemency. In the recording, Kennedy explained that the brutality and the deliberate nature of the crime had been decisive in his decision.
I'm personally opposed to capital punishment, and I really feel that the majority of people in Iowa are. And I don't know on what basis we're advised on this, but just on the chance that you might possibly review the case again, I felt an obligation to personally talk to you about it.
Right, I went through it, Governor. I read the story, and then I got a letter from the man, and I've never really, I'm not, the crime was so brutal is what finally made me decide not to go for clemency, and was so deliberate.
There's really some question in my mind, though the man is legally sane, apparently. He is a schizophrenic paranoid, which is a vicious combination, according to the reports I've had here, and that he's probably not responsible for a lot of the things he does, though he does know the difference between right and wrong as far as legal sanity is concerned.
Did the fellow that he killed came from Iowa, did he?
Yes, he was a Dubuque doctor.
When is this sentence supposed to be carried out?
It's supposed to be carried out the morning of the 15th, early in the morning.
I see, that sounds Friday. Well, Governor, why don't I take a look at the man on Monday, and then I'll call you back?
If you would, I would certainly appreciate it, Mr. President.
Oh, fine. Now, is our, on your call to me, is that known, or is that...
No, the call is strictly unknown.
But it's your feeling that we ought to commuted to
My
life.
personal feeling that you ought to commute your sentence to life. I'd greatly appreciate it if it could be done. It's your judgment to make, I know.
Right. Okay, Governor, I'll call you.
Feguer's execution would go ahead. On March the 5th, 1963, Feguer was transported to the Iowa State Penitentiary. He was placed on death row and would spend his final 10 days there. And according to the accounts from the prison, he was quiet and behaved as a model prisoner. There was no dramatic escape attempt, no final fight, no last minute confession that can change everything. Instead, Feguer waited, day after day, knowing exactly how his story would end. Eventually the question came, what would Feguer have for his last meal? And this is where Victor Feguer's story almost became unbelievable. Feguer asked for just a single olive, and he wanted the pip left inside, and that was his final meal. And so, for the premise of the video, I have got one olive. I'm not a big fan of olives, but let's carry on with Victor's story. But why an olive? Accounts of his final meal say that Feguer wanted the pip left inside because he hoped an olive tree would eventually grow from his grave, and he apparently saw the tree as a symbol of peace. A man sentenced to death for a brutal murder was about to take his final bite and chose something associated with peace, growth and life. Whether you see it as sincere, symbolic or simply impossible to understand, it makes his final meal one of the most unusual ever recorded. And there was another strange detail. According to the accounts of his burial, the olive pip was later found in his suit pocket. The night before Feguer's execution, he spent time with a Roman Catholic priest. The two reportedly stayed up all night. Hours passed and eventually morning came. Between approximately 4 and 5 in the morning, on March the 15th, Feguer was given a new suit. It was his final morning of his life. 2 guards escorted Feguer to the execution room. He was then going to be hanged. Outside, the world continued as normal. People went to work, cars drove through the street, newspapers being printed, but inside the Iowa State Penitentiary, Victor Feguer was about to become the last person ever executed in the state of Iowa. At the dawn of March 15th, 1963, he was hanged. He was 27 years old. So for more than 6 decades, people still remember Victor Feguer because of one bizarre fact. His last meal was a single olive. And maybe that's why Victor Feguer's final meal was so fascinating. Because when you're told you're going to die, what would you choose? Your favourite food? Something you've always loved? A final huge meal? A McDonald's? A KFC? A Burger King? Or would you choose something symbolic? Victor Feguer chose one olive, and that's what makes his final meal so unusual. And if you like this style of video, please let me know in the comments and let me know what you'd have for your last meal if you found yourself in this situation. We'll see you in the next one.